Hey, good morning. Welcome back. Man, it seems like we've been gone for a while, doesn't it, Carl?
Oh yeah.
Last week was the Multifamily Global Summit, and we were there having a blast. All the information and knowledge and speakers, but hey, we're back, and that's what's important. So, welcome to the Multifamily Unplugged, the number one Saturday morning radio show for the real estate investors, brokers, and property management professionals, where we dive into raw, unscripted conversation about multifamily real estate management and current events that are going to affect your business or typically can affect your business. Two topics that deserve a lot of in-depth, no fluff conversation, straight factual data that you can turn on this show and listen to, and when we get off, use right away. Hey, I'm Mike Morawski, and joined by my co-host C. Gordon Moose, who we proudly call Moose. Can you say, hey, good morning, Carl?
Yeah. Hey, how are you, Mike? And last week we spent a lot of time together, man. It was great. It was a lot of fun, though. I got to tell you, that was a blast. And getting to all the speakers and listen to the presentations. So we're like back into the Unplugged show now.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad we're back because we provide raw, unscripted conversation. It becomes spontaneous and real. And that's just really how somebody's real estate business is. It's spontaneous. It can sometimes feel unreal, but how do we deal with that? So how do we engage in that conversation, and how do we engage in things that come up? That's what we provide for you every week. So my co-host Moose and I, we have over 50 years of experience and knowledge to give you. So here's what I say: grab your coffee, sit back, and enjoy this ride. This week, we're joined by a friend of mine, Tim Lyons. Tim is a lieutenant on the New York City Fire Department, and until recently, he worked part-time as an emergency room RN in a Trauma One center. He brings years of real world management and leadership experience to his real estate investment career. Tim's initial goal with real estate was to create passive income and in turn be able to spend more time with his wife and three daughters. After partnering on a multifamily property, he saw firsthand the power of real estate investing as an opportunity. So you know what? Enough with that. We're going to introduce Tim right now, and we're going to ask Tim to tell us about himself. But here's what I really want to know. With three young girls, Tim, how'd they let you in that room, close the door on a Saturday morning by yourself?
Great question. And a lot of people always talk about how real estate is a team sport. So I have a wonderful wife, Christina, and she's corralling the crew upstairs along with the dog. So she has a big job ahead of her for the next hour or so.
Great. Good for Christina. Thanks for being here, Tim. Hey, listen,
why
don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about your background? What was a defining moment for you going into real estate? And how's that worked for you?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on the show today. I'm super excited to be here. And listen, I'm a 38-year-old regular Joe, right? I was in the W-2 grind, though. I had been a New York City firefighter, a job that I absolutely love. I wouldn't trade it in for the world. I've been doing that a little over 15 years. But everybody who's a fireman works on the side, and a lot of guys are contractors or small business owners. But I went back to nursing school, became a nurse. And like you just mentioned, I have three little girls, 9, 6, and 1. So when they were small and I was, putting in the hours and grinding it out, it wasn't a big deal. But all of a sudden they got a little bigger, talking a lot more, and they wanted daddy home. And I was doing 80, 90 hours a week with overtime and everything else. So there had to be a better way. I've always had my foot in the finance world, keeping up with the stock market, very into finance and real estate, reading books. But real estate was one of those things that was like a destination fallacy to me. It was one day I'll get into real estate. One day, maybe when I retire, I'll use my 401k or I'll use this. And, like everybody has a turning point. It was a year ago this summer. I was on the beach on vacation, North Carolina, the Outer Banks, and I was reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm sure everybody here has heard about. And I turned to my wife on the beach and I said to her, "Babe, I'm going to be a real estate investor." And she said, "Sure you are, Tim. Sounds good. Whatever you say, dude." And but she knows me. She knows that once I commit to something, once I have it in my head, I'm like a ravenous dog. So from that point forward, it was straight content, podcasts, audiobooks, conferences, networking. I had an insatiable appetite for knowledge, and I wanted to talk to as many people as I could and learn as much as I could. So, steep learning curve, right? I mean, real estate's not one of those things that you can just kind of jump in and jump out. But I did. I started with a 3-plex, and I bought that 3 months after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't have a ton of money in the bank account, but I figured it out, right? So I came up with the money for the down payment. I did all the rehab work myself, except for the roof. And here I was, right? I was a real estate investor. And, you know, all of a sudden I had that proof of concept that this works. And I did a little bit better on my tax return, you know, this year. And my wife saw that and she's like, you know what? This does work. And very quickly I realized though that I wasn't going to have enough capital to buy 3-plexes and keep going. Like I wasn't going to be able to do that every year or twice a year. So I looked into multifamily, and again, multifamily from like a 1 to 4 family, and then you have multifamily commercial, right? I mean, totally different ballgame, totally different way to evaluate the properties, to get them financed, to run them. And that was a whole nother learning curve. So, I did all my research very quickly. How do I get into multifamily? And I started seeing these operators who had education programs. And I got to be 100% honest with you guys. I was born and raised just outside of New York City. I have a very healthy dose of skepticism built into my DNA. So I was like, how am I gonna like pay tuition basically for a guru or a mentor or a coach? But, you know, the more I talked to people and the more I networked with, you know, current students in different programs, I got a lot more comfortable. And I remember
so
one person point.
Let me
Yeah, go ahead.
let me stop you real quick, because I just want all our listeners to know that this is not a paid advertisement for coaching. Because Carl and I both have a coaching program, and this is not a paid advertisement for coaching. So go ahead, finish, because you're doing a great job.
Yeah. And yeah, I can second that. No one's paying me anything. So anyway, you know, someone had pointed out to me that, look, if you want to lose weight, what do? You get a coach. If you want to go to the gym, or you want to do this, if you want to do anything well in life, you reach out to a mentor, you reach out to a coach, right? You're on any kind of team growing up, you have a coach, right? So once like that analogy just really like it stayed with me, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you know, I get it. And I vetted a couple of different sponsors, and one of them stood head and shoulders above everybody else. And so I went with it. You know, my wife and I made a decision. And this was the last week in February and going into the first week of March. And obviously, we all know what March brought onto this world, right? It was coronavirus. I mean, I can stop there for a second, or I can keep talking, because I can keep talking all day.
Here's the deal. And I know Carl's dying to say something, but you know, if we think small, we get small results, right? If we think big, we get big results. And there you are sitting reading that book, and you lean over to your wife and say, I'm going to be a real estate investor. That's you thinking big. That's not thinking small. And you just took the next step. And that next step was to absorb everything you could possibly absorb to get better at what you do and to learn what you needed to learn. But here's the cool thing about real estate, right? Is I don't believe we ever graduate. We never know it all, right? We're always learning something. So I think people hold back and they don't get started because there's that fear of, oh, I don't know it all, or I can't, you know, I'm not sure what to do. You know what? You're going to learn by moving forward, and you're going to learn by having a great, solid network of people around you, like Carl, like myself, that can help you, mentor you, and coach you, right? So
yeah, and Mike, I do just want to jump in real quick, because you know, you and I can talk for hours. I have a connection with you with the fire department, connection with you with New York State, and you know the thing I love about what you just said is that you called yourself a normal Joe, right? Just a regular Joe. And that's one of the things that Mike and I really want to impress upon the people, not only in the show, but also at the Multifamily Global Summit and the 90-day program that we're doing. This is something everybody can do when they put their mind to it, right? And I always tell people, start with a 3-flat. You're going to make mistakes, right? Start with a 3-flat, start with a 4-flat. And you probably faster than most people see, okay, now I can do a 6-flat or an 8-flat or a 10-flat. And that's how listen, Mike managed 4,000, 5,000 units at one point. I never got that big. We all start with one building, right? And so for people that are listening that don't think they can do it, Mike did it. He didn't have property. He got into it because he had the right mindset. He found a mentor. He moved forward. I did the same thing, right? You did the same thing. I was a banker for 8 years before I saw all these people before I jumped in. So that's a really great message that totally unscripted that you brought to this conversation. Anybody can do this when they put their mind to it.
Yeah, 100%. And I tell you what really gave me a lot of value in the beginning and a lot of confidence was, different podcasts. I mean, Bigger Pockets, Keith Weinhold, Michael Blanc. Like, you hear these different podcasts and you hear regular people, teachers, firefighters, cops, bankers, attorneys, doctors. We all put our pants on the same way each morning, right? I mean,
Right.
these are the same people, and they committed. They made a decision. They committed. They got themselves educated, and then they took action. And I think that last piece of taking action is one of those pieces that, people just, and listen, I'm brand new at this, right? But people miss out on that. When I took action and I figured it out and and you adapt, you overcome, and then you go to the next issue, So that was really instrumental for me to hear all those stories. And I reached out to a lot of those people, at the end of every podcast, and, what do they say? How can people get in touch with you? And I would email them, and I would call them if they left their phone number, God forbid, right? I don't think they think anyone's going to call them, but I did. And I had some great conversations, and hearing their stories was truly inspirational and probably one of the biggest reasons why I took action.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things you commented on too was you knew that if you were going to buy a single family house every year, that you were going to have to make more money and you weren't going to be able to do it on your income, right? So the economies of scale in the multifamily sector is really important. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that. That's why Carl and I are so focused on creating wealth with small multifamilies, that 2, 4 to 6, and then graduating into that pocket of 10, 20, 50 unit deals, because it's that economies of scale, right? Here's what I always tell this story, that if you own one single family house and the mortgage is $1,200 and nobody lives there, it's kind of painful on the pocket every month, that you got to pay that mortgage. But if you own a 3 unit or a 4 unit or more, and you've got a 10% vacancy, chances are you still can pay the bills. So it's the economies of scale. There's other things, but that's a big one, right?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, that's why I felt so confident in that threeplex, because when I bought it, only 2 out of 3 units were occupied, and those 2 units were going to pay, my expenses from the get-go, and I was able to turn the first floor unit, and then once we put some renter in there, I mean, that's when the cash flow started, and that's like a total game changer. Once that cash flow starts coming in each month, you're like, okay, now I can see where this is going, So. But yeah, I mean, it was getting a start, and I went back and forth a lot, single family versus duplex versus triplex, and I finally just that's how I started, and it works.
Yeah, you make another good point about the tax benefits. A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, if you and your significant other, if you have a significant other, and you're making, you're earning, some good income from a W-2. The tax benefits are huge. I mean, if you have a good accountant, you can really maximize that. And that's the other beautiful thing about real estate. It's something that somebody else is going to pay your mortgage. Your renters pay your mortgage. It's going to appreciate most likely, if you're in a decent area, and you get the tax benefits. So from a intellectual standpoint, real estate is something that, everybody should really get involved with, because if you really wealthy people, I mean, I'm talking about really wealthy people, they all have 2 things in common. They have equities in companies and they own real estate, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, and early on I read that book by Garrett Sutton, Tax-Free Wealth. And growing up, like, my parents got a tax return or something, it was like, oh, that's like our vacation fund. And then even when I was adult, like, every year I'd look forward to the end, tax season to see how much money I was going to get for my tax return, right? I never paid attention to how taxes really worked until I started thinking about real estate. And, when you hear the word taxes, like, people cringe and they like, become like, they wall off. But if you embrace it and you learn the tax code and you learn exactly how to use it to your advantage, basically, I mean, the government incentivizes real estate investors to provide clean, safe, affordable housing. You do that, and then you can reap the tax benefits. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, but you have to learn the game. Like you have to learn, the tax side of it, and just like any other profession, I mean, you wouldn't go to a neurosurgeon if you broke your ankle, but they're both doctors. So you wouldn't go to a CPA that specializes in, I don't know, small businesses. You have to go to a real estate centric, hopefully who's the CPA is a real estate investor, him or herself, and they're really intimately involved in that.
Yeah.
That was
let me just make one quick comment, Carl. I'm sorry. I just want our listeners to know, hey, if you have any questions for Tim or Carl or I, or there's any current events out there that you want to talk about, write it in the chat. We'll answer those questions and take those right out of the chat. The other thing is that, listen, do us a favor. Would you go to our YouTube channel, like this, subscribe to it, and there's plenty of content out there for you to grab hold of and listen to. We've got a number of past episodes of Multifamily Unplugged. So, it's that information is out there for you guys. Go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you made a really good point there, Tim. I'm an athlete, right? If I want to be an Olympic hockey player, I'm not going to go and I'm looking for a mentor or a guide or somebody. I'm not going to go to somebody that never got beyond high school. I'm not going to go to somebody that is playing golf or basketball, and I'm not going to go to somebody that doesn't understand the dynamic of mentorship and training and guidance, right? So my point is, if you're looking for guidance or mentorship or training, find somebody that's playing the game bigger than you're playing, right? Find somebody that's playing the same game that you're playing, and find somebody that understands the dynamic of coaching, right? That actually has coaches themselves. So, and that's where Mike and I come from with regard to our program. And, you made a comment, Tim. You said, I'm just starting off. But here's the reality. For some people listening, you're actually ahead of the game, right? You're ahead of the game. You've gone through, I'm assuming that you went through a process to find the 3 flat that you bought. I'm assuming you went through a process of putting it under contract. You went through the process of doing due diligence, right? You went through the process of closing, right? Well, a lot of people, it's the start that stops them, right? And just by you going through that process, you're ahead of the curve. And Mike and I have done it hundreds and hundreds of times, right? So, for us, it's like muscle memory. And the point I'm making is, just like your accountant, find an accountant that understands real estate. And one of the first questions you should ask them is, how much property do you own, right? Or a broker. If you're dealing with a broker, one of the first questions I would ask them is, how many buildings do you own? And if they said, oh, I don't own any buildings, I would listen to them, but I would move on. I want to deal with a broker, an attorney, an accountant, a contractor that actually owns multifamily property, because they understand what you're going through. Mike, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And one comment I want to make is, when I first got into real estate, and this goes back to Tim's, rhetoric about coaching and training. When I was doing sales, I was following Mike Ferry, right? And he's a coach and a trainer, teaches you how to prospect and how to do real estate deals. He used to say, and I took this to heart, buy your best listing once a quarter. Every quarter, buy your best listing. And you'd be amazed, after a few years in real estate, you buy your best listing every quarter, what your real estate portfolio looks like, right? So I agree with you 100% that as a broker working with investors, and 75% of my business when I was in the real estate sales business was investors, small multi-unit, single family properties. And they appreciated the fact that I got kicked around by tenants too, so that you knew how to handle it, right? And help them.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, and having somebody who's on the same page is huge, because there's things that come up, right, during due diligence or during looking at the property, and you want to be able to look to your left and look to your right and have a team member that have a team member that's right there with you and like can understand, and maybe you can bounce ideas off of. If you're with a residential realtor who's used to spending time with first-time home buyers or families finding family homes, I mean, it's just a different dynamic. Could they get the job done? Yeah, but as you're building out your team, you want to really align yourself with players that you can rely on for advice and to bounce things off of, and hopefully solidify a relationship going forward.
Yeah,
So let me
talk
ask you
about
this.
that. Hang on. Tim, I want to ask you to talk about that whole team building and networking thing a little bit more, because that's one of the first lessons I teach when I'm teaching or coaching a new investor or working with investors. Even a seasoned guy, I want to know what his network and his team looks like, because we're only as strong as the people around us, right? So talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. It almost sounds cliche on these podcasts. Build your team and this and that and mindset but building your team. So when I joined my community that I joined with the education and the mentorship, I'm surrounded by people who are below me, at my level, and way, way above me. And through that, by aligning yourself with like-minded people with the same end goal in mind, and everybody wants to help each other out, I have this huge team that I can rely on. People who have been there before. Hey, I'm doing a financing. Should I do a agency debt or bridge loan or a community bank on this one? And it's amazing the instant information you can come up with by leveraging your teammates. And even with like a joint venture deal, right? There's a deal that I'm looking at right now, and it's a bunch of us. And who has a strength in underwriting? Who has a strength by being boots on the ground? Who has a property management company? Who has a strong balance sheet? I mean, there's so many team members in commercial real estate, and specifically multifamily, that you can build out. And if you guys align, you can really have something special going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. And Mike, I was actually going to ask, because I know that the firefighters are a tight community, and I have a sibling that was just retired actually after 27 years, and they partnered up on stuff. They own about 7 homes together, and one guy's an electrician, or one person's an electrician, one person's a carpenter, one person knows HVAC, right? And so one person had a boat, had some capital, right? And so looking, you don't have to go it alone, I guess is my point. And Mike referred to it based on your comment about teammates. So, I guess I'll ask you, I mean, have you considered working with any of the people that you work with to do deals, or any of the other people that you spend a lot of time with at work? Are they in the industry? Or I'm just curious to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, some people that I've come across, like they'll do fix and flips. Other people do the BRRRR method, and nobody is really doing what I'm doing. And when I first joined, I'm going to be 100% honest, I thought I was going to take down 6 and 12 and 20 unit properties. Very quickly, I had the opportunity to co-sponsor a syndication, and we just closed on that in August. And I got a behind-the-scenes look on how a syndication is put together and how it goes down, how to capital raise, how to, do the syndication. Something I never thought I'd ever even come close to doing. And right now, I'm doing a 506C offering for a property down in South Carolina. So, am I always going to be a syndicator? Probably, because I enjoy it, But I'm still looking for those smaller properties too. But the thing about getting back to your question about the firefighters and teaming up is, I think people are starting to wake up a little bit to real estate and to alternative investments. And for the longest time, in any firehouse kitchen or a lounge or a TV room or whatever, the conversation mostly is surrounded by the pension, our pension and how it works, and then it's we have a 457 plan similar to a 401k, and people want to do the 25, 30 years, and then they want to talk about investing. Investing in the firehouse is just not talked about the way other things are talked about like that. And I think, as people start to, expand their minds and see what other people are doing, I mean, like I get a ton of questions from guys I work with, because, you know, people know Tim Lyons as the firefighter and ER nurse for the last, you know, 10, 15 years, right? And now I'm Tim the syndicator and Tim the real estate investor. You know, so, you know, they call me all sorts of names in the firehouse. I mean, I get called Lieutenant Madoff, Bernie, you know, Lieutenant Ponzi scheme, you know, I mean, because, you know, they're busting my chops. You know, they're busting my chops pretty good. But then at the end of the day, they're also like, all right, so how does this work? You know, and how, you know, how are you doing it? You know, so I think it's good because, listen, I mean, we all got to start somewhere. And if I can just help one person, either invest in a syndication or, you know, teach them about underwriting or help them buy their first single family property, that's a huge win for me. And, you know, that's the impact that I'd like to have.
Mike, we should really talk to Tim about, you know, this never dawned on me, but we should really talk to Tim about designing something or making an offering to, you know, I mean, the firehouse guys, right? I mean, and, you know, you make a great point. That's what most people do. They wait, you know, they're going to wait 20 years, right? And the best time to buy real estate is now. You know, if you're going to get into it, get into it. Because 20 years from now, think about how you'll invest differently in 20 years, Tim, because of the action you took today, as opposed to waiting for 20 years to take that action that you could have taken today, right? And so, you know, and I even see that with it was my sister, actually. She was an EMT, a nurse, and she worked for the fire department. And, you know, people would come to her, you know, she bought a house, then she bought another house, then she bought another house. And all of a sudden she's the expert and people are like, what are you doing? Right. And she's retired and her income from the houses and her portfolio, you know, Mike, you and I should talk about that offline because there's a lot of people there that would probably love our 90-day program. And Tim, just to let you know, part of our program is not only the education, it's also the community. It's also the accountability. And we're also challenging people to actually buy or put under contract that first multifamily property that they've been thinking about doing for years to actually do it, right? And you know, you're a prime example of taking action and doing it.
Yeah, and I love what you said, right? The best time to buy is now, right? Because that was one of my limiting beliefs was, you know, am I buying at the height of the market? Am I buying it right? Am I buying at the wrong time? And somebody, I don't know, somewhere along the way had said to me, I don't know if it was like a personal development guru or anything, but they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time to plant that tree is right now, because you got to start somewhere. And as long as you're buying for the right reasons, you're buying for cash flow, you're buying in a good area, there's job growth, population growth. You know, maybe you're in the path of progress. But you know, there's ways to buy real estate where you're protected on the back end, and that's just what people need to do. I mean, just educate yourself, and as my mentor Gino Barbaro talks about all the time, you need to commit and take action. And he always says, education times action equals results. And you know, when you have that mindset, you know, this is very doable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you know, that's interesting you say that because Mike and I, you know, Mike's got a lot more experience than I do in real estate. I mean, you know, I joke with him. I said, you've forgotten what most people haven't learned yet, because I mean, he was really syndicating and doing big deals. I mean, he owned and operated 4,000 or 5,000 units. If you think about that, you know, it's approaching the billion, you know, $500 million worth of real estate. You know, we had about 22 buildings at one point, you know, 10 flats up to 28 unit buildings. So, you know, and the point is, you know, I'm approaching, you know, when Mike approached me to do the multifamily global summit and then this follow-up 90-day program, which we're kicking off in the next couple of weeks, I come at it from a mindset standpoint. And I can already tell, Tim, that you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You've probably read Think and Grow Rich. You know, you're probably a Bob Proctor fan, you know, Esther, you know, you've got that mindset, which is so key because, you know, you can have the best system in the best market with the best properties, the best management people, the best tenants. However, if you don't have the right mindset, you're just not going to go as far as you could. So, you know, and Mike comes from that perspective too. You know, he looks at real estate from a mindset perspective. I look at mindset from a real estate perspective, and that's really key. And you mentioned limiting beliefs, right? That's part of the challenge is people think someday somewhere. And, you know, I don't know if you ever heard Mike just pop back in. Did you ever hear the story about him sitting on vacation with his father when he was a kid? Tell that story real quick, Mike, because that was you had a limiting belief. You as a young child, Mike, didn't develop that limiting belief because of what your father said to you about the people that own the doors. So just quickly tell that story because I think it's good. Mike, are you muted? Oh, you're muted, Mike. Mike, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here. Something happened with the internet. I apologize. But the story is that, you know, I'm on family vacation. I'm 8 years old. I'm sitting on the side of a swimming pool, and I come from a family that has no real estate background experience. And I asked my dad what all the doors in this place were at this resort we were staying at, and he goes on in his little bit of wisdom to explain to me that this is a hotel and people go there and they stay there and they travel there and they pay the owner money. And it was like at that moment I decided I wanted to be the owner being paid the money, right? And there were other events that happened after that that made me think, wow, real estate is a way to go. You know, I would ask my mom, we'd be driving down the expressway and I'd say, who owns these buildings? And she would always say insurance companies. And she didn't know any better, right? But as I got into the syndication business and we started to syndicate deals and do institutional money, we had insurance companies as partners. It's funny how that whole thing came together, right? So it's interesting how your whole, how you get shaped, you know, and the things that happen in your life that shape you and give you direction and where you're going.
And how you develop your mindset. See, the reason why I wanted you to tell that story is as an 8-year-old, the light bulb went off for you.
Yeah.
The light bulb went off for you and that light never dimmed, right? You're like, I want to be that guy, right? Well, a lot of people are on the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, they think, oh, I'll never own a property, or, you know, that's for the Rockefellers, you know, or for the Gates or for the, you know, the Bezos or whatever, right? That's not true. Listen, in Chicago, I'm in Chicago. In Chicago alone, there's 72,000 people that own multifamily buildings, and that's 4 flats and up. I'm not talking about 3 flats and 2 flats, right? I'm talking about because I was a banker, I used to finance those. So the statistics were 72,000, just slightly over 72,000 own 5 flats and above. The majority of them own 2 buildings. 2 buildings. They're not the Al Winnecks that own 20,000 units. The majority of those people own just 2 buildings, right? And so that the point is, you know, when you get enough education, right, and you find the right mentor or coach or guide or whatever you want to call it, the key, as you said, Tim, and Mike, I know you know, is get into action, right? Get into action because that's so key.
Hey, here's something else that's really important, and talk about this too a little, Tim. Is, you know, you mentioned action early on when you were talking, and I think it's important. We take the knowledge, we create it into power, we execute, we take action. But I think there's another piece to it, and the piece of contribution. What are we doing in the midst of all this that we're giving back or we're doing for somebody else, right? So one of the things that I always thought about when I was syndicating deals was, how do I supply or offer good, clean, safe housing? A lot of single parents, right? Whether they're female or whether they're male, but there's a lot of single parents out there with young kids that come home from school and might be a latchkey kid. How do we provide a safe, secure housing facility for those people? That's contribution. So how are we taking what we're doing and making a contribution out of it?
Great point, Mike. Great point.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things like that I immediately thought about was just to build off you, Mike. You know, taking a building that was maybe in a little bit of disrepair or had some deferred maintenance, and you know, when you come in and you put some siding and a roof, and you know, you rehab a unit and you make a nice, safe place to live, people take pride in that, right? Even though they're renting, there's a pride of where they live, and so that was huge for me. You know, I have 3 single moms with kids in my 3-plex. And you know, they have a nice place to live, you know, and I'm responsive, and they call me and text me, and I take care of things. That's number 1. But number 2 is, you know, as I'm on my journey here and people are reaching out to me now being like, Tim, how are you doing this? And how does this work? I love to be able to tell them my story and be like, you can do it too. And if you want my help, I'm more than happy to help out. And if you want to talk once a week or whatever it is, because there's an impact there. And Greg and I, my brother, who is my business partner at Cityside Capital, we always say that, like, people are watching. And who are those people? A lot of them are, he has two older kids, 13 and 10, I believe. And I got three young girls, and, they ask their little girl questions about real estate, and we don't go deep, but, they're watching, people are watching. And to have that impact on somebody, like you were 8 years old, Mike, learning about doors at a hotel. It's never too early, I guess, to kind of teach our kids and just our friends in general, like, you guys can do this, and it's very doable, but it's a way to build wealth. You can't save your way to wealth. And once I realized that, you can't save your money in a savings account and expect to be wealthy. You just can't do it. So there's a way to do it in a smart way. You don't get rich overnight. This is a marathon and not a sprint. But once you have that right mindset, you can do it.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm glad you brought that point up, because I know you personally, and I know that is a big part of who you are, Mike. And Tim, it sounds like it's a big part of who you are. And that's really key. Why are you doing what you're doing? And we always start there. Why is it? And, is it nice to have an additional income? Yeah. Is it nice to build residual cash flow? Yeah. Is it nice to build legacy wealth? 100%. Is it nice to save money, legally by using the tax code? 100%. But there's something deeper there. And it is that, it is providing safe housing for, three families. I used to tell people in my building, I said, listen, I own the building now, but it's your home. It's your home. It's my building. Someone owned it before when you lived here. Someone's probably going to own it again if you live here long term. I said, let's partner on this. I said, I'll provide a safe, secure, reasonably priced place, but you have to be my partner. I'm not going to be here 24/7. You're here all the time. It's your home, but it's my building. And, people really resonated with that. And they would call me up and say, hey, this needs to be done. Or I had one building where one of the guys would actually do the work. He would fix the door knob, or he would do something. And then when I would show up, once or twice a week, he'd say, oh, hey, by the way, I went to people that need a new, and I'd say, well, keep the receipt. I'll pay you. I would actually, I obviously would reimburse him, but I'd also give him a couple of bucks or $20 off his rent or whatever. And the point is, they saw that I wasn't there just to collect the rent. I was there because I actually really cared about the building and about providing a safe, secure place. And that was, that was a mindset. It really was a mindset.
Yeah, for sure. So Tim.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask. So, you've been in real estate now, a little bit. How is the environment that we're in, this pandemic situation, affecting real estate on a whole? How's it affecting you? And the question I ask everybody, and we just came from the summit last week, and I asked every speaker, how's it affecting us moving forward in this space?
Yeah, so great question. So, on my threeplex, it's just being responsive to the residents. There's a federal moratorium on evictions by executive decree, right, until January 1st. And, if you're in this for the right reason, not to just rake your tenants over the coals and maximize your profit, but I mean, if you really just, do the right thing and, keep the tenants who are, they're your customers, like you got to treat them right. So we're trying to be very responsive to any kind of request. If they're late with their payments, we try to work it out as best we can. Because at the end of the day, like, as a country, we're kind of suffering. People are suffering with job losses and everything. So we're just trying to be extra responsive and communicative. But as far as purchasing new properties right now, like just understanding where we are in the market cycle, people that I speak to regularly, they think that we're cresting over the top of that market cycle from the peak. And we're going to, we're on the downward slide. So, what does that mean? Like, so a lot of my mentors talk about, a flight to quality, meaning, instead of purchasing a C asset right now and doing a heavy value add, we're moving more towards like a B minus, B plus space, because the flight to quality in a downward market is where you're going to be having some level of safety. So maybe taking on that extra heavy value add is not the way to do it right now. and also paying attention to the trends and the data. Like data is huge in real estate, right? So like, for example, in New York City, people are leaving. People are leaving the primary cities because we can work from home now, right? So, getting very comfortable in a specific market. And right now for us, it's secondary and tertiary markets because, the primary cities, San Francisco, Miami, LA, New York City, people are going where they have a little bit more green space, have a backyard, have a little bit, the de-densification, so that's what we're paying attention to right now, where we are with coronavirus.
What do you think? Do you see, the next 6 months or so as they continue to keep this eviction moratorium in place and make those adjustments and the forbearances on mortgages and challenges paying mortgages? Do you foresee deals coming up, or do you see the market staying flat, backsliding? What do you see coming price-wise?
So yes, across the board, multifamily has been pretty resilient through this recession so far. So according to a lot of the reports that I've been looking at, greater than 90% collections across the board, across the country. So, that's pretty impressive when you talk about commercial real estate, because retail, office space right now, they seem to be hurting. But as far as opportunities going forward, people who maybe didn't buy right a year, 2, 3 years ago, maybe did short-term financing or the bridge loan, and they thought they were going to do a heavy value add and refi out their initial investment, and now all of a sudden, the lending environment is going to change pretty soon, right? So they may not be able to refi as much as they thought, and now they're going to get in trouble because now they have investors to answer to. So those are going to be like the motivated sellers, the people who need a solution. I think you're going to see a lot of loan assumptions. I was just at a conference this past weekend in Jacksonville with my mentorship community, and they talked a lot about this, that the loan assumptions are going to start coming up. People who are going to start scrambling because they didn't buy it right and finance it right. So I think that's going to be the next thing. They also talked about like the vintage of properties. Like, so in large multifamilies, like the 50s and 60s built properties, those are, 60 years old now, so what kind of electrical problems are coming up? What kind of, are there sewer pipes that are going to start crumbling? So there's, one of the mentors talks about the CapEx tsunami that's coming with some of these vintage properties. So just being on the lookout, just because something has a good price doesn't mean it's a home run. You really got to do your due diligence and find out where you are, be really niched down in that specific market, and just do your assumptions, conservatively.
Yeah. So
that's really great. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry. Talk about this, Tim. You made a comment. You said buy right. And a lot of times people, when they think buy right, they mean, oh, I got a great deal, or I got, 10% off on the purchase price or whatever. But it's more than just the price you pay. Talk about that, because you've alluded to that a lot in that conversation. Yeah.
So, by the way, I joined the Jake and Gino program, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro, and they have a 3-step process that they talk about nonstop, and it's buy right, manage right, and finance right. And as long as you stick to those 3 legs of buying multifamily real estate, you can have some certainty in your life, right? Some certainty that you're going to be coming out on top as a real estate investor. So buying right. So I just talked about the vintage of the properties, the flight to quality, the de-densification. So that's, that falls under the buy right. The finance right is what kind of debt are you putting on that property? Are you getting a agency debt with a small balance loan? Or are you going to go to a community bank, with a 5 or 10 year note? You have to really kind of have the exit plan when you're purchasing the property and putting the correct debt on the property. You can't just go out to a bank and say, I just whatever sort of loan you want to throw on this. You have to be very educated and specific on what you're trying to do, how you're trying to buy it, what your exit plan might be. If you can't sell in 5 or 7 years, could you hold it in cash flow and still have the proper debt on the property? And then just managing it right. Are you going to self-manage? Are you going to have a property management company? If so, you got to do your due diligence on property management companies. You want somebody with systems and boots on the ground and local knowledge, who's done it before. If you're doing a value add project, you want somebody that's been there before, who has done the unit turn successfully. There's just like so many things to think about. But yeah, buy right, finance right, and manage right. Those are the 3 pillars of the Jake and Gino community, at least.
Yeah. So a little shameless plug here. You mentioned exit plan. I just released my book, Exit Plan, everything you need to know about multifamily investing and why you need an exit plan before you buy. I'm an advocate that people need that exit plan before they ever even get to the closing table, because we hear all the time that we make money in real estate on the purchase, but the problem is we don't realize the gain until we sell. Now, what I talk about an exit plan is it doesn't necessarily always mean selling. We're not trading out of that deal. We might be doing a refinance. We might be bringing a partner in. There's different ways to exit, but have that plan in place. And it sounds like, Tim, that's something you think a lot about as well. How important is that? Yeah,
it's huge, right? I mean, could you imagine getting bridge debt and going into a downward cycle that I think we're about to go into, and not being able to refi? What do you do then? You have a note that's going to expire. It's going to either balloon or be called due, and now you can't refi your initial capital out of the project. So what do? You do a capital call to your investors? Do you give them the bank the keys and walk away? I mean, you got to think about these things. Where are we on the market cycle? What kind of debt? What's your exit plan? What's your business plan? Buying real estate and holding is great, but having the correct debt, having the correct plan is huge.
Yeah, and that you always want to begin with the end in mind, no doubt about it. And it's funny because that actually happened to us. We had 5 loans with Citibank, and not to say anything against Citibank, I probably shouldn't even mention Citibank. We had 5 loans with a national lender, and it was time to refi. We were current on every payment. They were good. The buildings were 100% occupied. We had very little deferred maintenance. We had no deficiencies, right? We went to refi. They said, we're not rewriting those loans. And I was like, what do you mean you're not rewriting those loans? They said, we're not refinancing. You have to pay us off. So here's what happened. We went to several other banks and they said, we're not taking on new customers. So we had real trouble finding a new lender because all the national banks, this was in 2008, I think, or 2007, they weren't taking on, they were either closing down their apartment lending loan programs, or they weren't taking on new customers. So it was a real problem for us because we didn't think about that and consider that when we started. Like you said, Mike, you got to start with the end in mind. Exit strategy is so important.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're winding down here, Carl. We're at about 10:48, and it's been another great morning. I'm not sure if we lost Tim's audio and video now, but we may have. I want to just thank Tim. Oh,
no, I'm here.
Back again. Good.
I'm here, baby.
Go get a copy of Exit Plan. If you want if you're an ebook person, send me an email and I will give you a passcode to go get a free copy. If you like to have the book in your hand, go to my website and you can order the book. But I am, I'm an advocate for exit planning, and I think that this is a great start for somebody, whether you're new or been in the business for a while. It's a great reminder and a kick in the butt. So,
Mike, I want to mention registration for the upcoming 90-day execution program is still open, right, with us?
Right. Yes, it is.
You get there because we're gonna keep registration open through next week. So where do they go?
They go to the website and they go to mycoreintentions.com, and right on the front page they have an option to get some more information or go ahead and register for the program. And that 90-day program, I was telling somebody yesterday about what was all involved in that. And, to get an hour a week with you and an hour a week with me, talking about mindset and talking about strategy and building a plan. And you have 2 hours a week of that training and the due diligence and the coach and the property management and operations and the evaluation piece. It's 32 hours of coaching over 90 days, over a 13-week program. You want to talk about immersion, Tim? There's going to be a little bit of immersion in that for people because, I always tell people, hey, bring a journal with you. And once you start to take some notes, some questions are going to come up and you're going to have to read. We're going to give you some homework and you're going to have to be building out your mindset. So our goal here is to help people move forward and have that success. So.
Love that.
Tim.
Real quickly, Mike, I just want to add in there, part of that program, part of my portion of that program is you actually get a physical journal. It's a 90-day find your focus journal so that you actually have a physical journal that you can journal in. And part of it is, as we mentioned, talking about community. We're building a community where people can learn from each other and partner with each other. And also we're challenging people. If you've been thinking about buying a multifamily property, this is an opportunity to have some training, some guidance, support, and also accountability to actually move you towards that. Because, not too many people are going to do much at the end of 2020 because we're at the end of 2020. What are you doing now to set yourself up to win in 2021? And that's why Mike and I put this program together.
For sure. All right. Well, listen, Tim, thanks for being here this morning. Thank your wife and your daughters for allowing you to spend time with us and let us take you away from your family. I know, being a fireman, you're away a lot. So thanks for your service and for being here.
Thank
You've
you.
been more than helpful and gracious. So any last advice for a new investor or somebody moving forward this morning?
Yeah, I would just say, just like Carl said, start reading, start writing stuff down, start writing your goals down. It can happen, nothing has to be perfect. You can know 70% and then start taking action and you'll figure it out. So, you can always, get in touch with me. My email address is tim@citysidecap.com, CITYSIDECAP.com. And I'd love to, take a conversation offline and chat. So.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll be in touch. So thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. Carl, good to see you this morning. I know you're traveling with family. Good for you. Enjoy yourself. And everybody will be back here next Saturday. If you need anything meantime, don't hesitate to give us a call. Look forward to talking to everybody soon.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Thank you guys. Bye now.